When I first saw Sedona, I was just like, really help people understand what Sedona really is and the potential it has for their growth, healing, and evolution. It will change our lives. First Sedona ancient ruin, and it was in a very sacred canyon. It blew my mind. Wow, this exists like all over Sedona. But this was something that captured my heart and soul so powerfully that I was never the same again. That's what I love to see in this community, is every time we come together for a dance, a group ceremony, a healing circle, a kirtan circle, anything, we all have that collective intention to raise the energy, not just of Sedona and the consciousness of this land, but the entire planet. And to really help us to shift organically into that next level that the Hopi referred to as the fifth world.
Drop in,
unwind,
and recalibrate
as we shift your mentality and your reality.
Let's elevate alongside one another as we keep the vibes high
and we keep the consciousness ever evolving in this collective of high vibrational frequencies.
Welcome to the High Vibe Collective podcast. We're your hosts,
Aaron
and Stephanie.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabina Malinelli. I'm here with the High Vibe Collective, and I'm so grateful and so honored to introduce you to Miguel Montoya. Miguel Montoya is a sacred land guide, musician, and spiritual healer.
Thank you, Sabina. Thank you for having me. And hello to everyone. I'm looking forward to what we're going to get into today, talking about this sacred Sedona land that has drawn millions and millions of people for so many years, much longer than the tourism industry, going back thousands and thousands of years, to many sacred travelers and pilgrims who have come here to find their truth. And now we carry on that tradition here in Sedona. And we're going to talk about some fun stuff. So thanks for tuning in today.
Thank you, Miguel. What a fascinating journey. I remember when I first arrived here in Sedona, you were one of the first persons I met, and I was so excited to know more about you because you gave me the feeling of really belong to the land. And I say belong as a big word because some people, like when we arrive to a new place, we're just getting acquainted to the land.
Yeah.
But to me, when I saw you, I was like, wow, this man is like part of the land. So tell me more about this journey, what it means for you.
Well, firstly, what a great compliment. Thank you for sharing that in that way that you did, because my experience daily is obviously unique to me, and what people are perceiving is always a mystery. Right. And, Aaron had just mentioned, you're like the poster child of the Sedona guy, Yes. In a good way, he said, and I was like, that does sound like it's in a good way, because one embodies that feeling over many, many years, over thousands of ceremonies, out on the land. And that's luckily been part of what I do for a living, but it's also what I do in my personal time. And so my favorite thing to do is gather my absolute best friends, go to the most sacred places that I possibly know, which do require a high degree of physical activity, and to do sacred ceremony in these special places around Sedona with music, with prayer, and with the proper entry into those sacred places. And so this protocol to me has to be followed if one is wanting to connect with the healing potential of the land and to truly honor the spirit guardians. These are the other dimensional beings that live here that we don't always acknowledge because people don't see them or aren't aware of them.
This episode is brought to you by Scenic Sedona Tours, the perfect Sedona tour. See Sedona in the comfortable open-air vans with overhead canopies for shade in a fully narrated tour. Experience multiple vortex sites, learn about Sedona's geology and history, and even about the legends that have made Sedona famous. Ranked number 1 on TripAdvisor, you can also tour the Grand Canyon. All tours depart from the Dragon's Den, Sedona's hip, crystal, metaphysical gift and clothing store.
And so for me, that's the first step that I had to learn was, the sacred aspect of this land, the beings that live here, the sacred history, the indigenous history, and how delicate this all is. And so, right now Sedona is going through a lot of changes. It's growing all the time. The tourism industry is both needed, and it can be a little scary for some locals because we see it growing and growing. And so there's never been a greater need for, the sacred aspect of the land and keeping it sacred. Even our dear sister Kelsey has a new movement, to keep Sedona sacred.
Right.
And I think that's so beautiful, and that's where I want to be putting my energies, is into education and into honoring the land and really helping others to understand how sacred it is. It's not just there for you to drive your ATVs and
Right.
have fun. Yes, we want everyone to have fun, but we do want you to have a magical spiritual experience. And in my experience, that can only happen when you are totally respectful, totally honoring of the energy of the land, the spirit of the land, and you go through the proper protocol. And whether that's extremely advanced or just a simple ritual of just asking permission before you enter one of these sites, or saging yourself, or getting into a good space prior to your hike, whatever it is that you can do to honor the land, it does help. And it's a huge benefit. And so now we have 5.5 million visitors coming to Sedona, and education is key because we have to help everyone to understand that, yes, there is tremendous healing potential here in these sacred sites, and you can transform your life. It can uplift your spiritual path, but all you have to do in return is offer that reciprocity, offer the love, offer the ceremony, offer the gratitude, offer tobacco, whatever it is that feels good to you, but leave it better than when you came, because that's how we really tune in to the spirit guardians, and that's how you gain their respect. And so when I go into a particular canyon, I feel like the spirit guardians are like, oh, there he comes. We like him. He's cool, And obviously I'm being a little casual and funny, but to me, that's kind of what I'm suggesting, that you build such a beautiful relationship with the spirit guardians of this land that they see you coming, and you have an all access pass for life, so long as you continue in that energy of integrity and kindness and love and gratitude and respect.
Thank you so much, Miguel. You are talking about so many topics that are so dear to my soul as someone that really want to honor and cherish ancestral wisdom. And in your case, in your story, I wonder what really inspired since the beginning to realize that, hey, it's important to enter this space with sacredness. It's important to sage, to ask for permission. I feel those are gifts that not everyone is able to see. It's like, okay, we're just walking in the land, let's just go by. But for you, it sounds to me that since the very beginning of your path, you knew that there was something else. So I want to know, what was that? What was that catalytic moment in your life that made you realize, hey, let's bring back the sacredness into the space so we are welcome in the land?
Yeah, great question. So when I first came to Sedona, I was a little kid. I was with my dad, and we would just go to the Chapel of the Holy Cross and to Lakapaki. And that's all we knew. That's all he knew. Okay. And as a result, that's all I knew, because I was a kid just going, all right, where are we going next, Dad? And then I moved out here to Arizona on my own. And then I had a spiritual awakening. And during college, I started driving up to Sedona on my own and going to different workshops and weekend retreats. And that's where I started meeting some people that I still know to this day. And it was so magical. And I had an incredible spiritual mentor at the time during college. And he was a channel for the Ascended Masters. And he took me to my first Sedona ancient ruin. And it was in a very sacred canyon out past Bear Mountain. And it blew my mind. I was like, wow, this exists like all over Sedona. And he's like, oh yeah, they're everywhere. And to this day, and I've taken you there.
Yeah.
And to this day, that's my favorite ancient ruin complex. or shall we say ancient dwellings. Some of the Hopi have asked us to not use the word ruin anymore. They prefer ancient dwelling because it has a better connotation. And so that particular site made a huge impression on me. And I couldn't believe how holy it was. I had been to ancient cathedrals, I'd been to castles, I'd been to different temples in my life, and having grown up in Europe. But this was something that just captured my heart and soul so powerfully that I was never the same again. And so I believe that it was in that moment when I realized that I would be some form of sacred land guide. I didn't know how that was going to manifest because I was training in journalism at the time. But I was also training with this, very masterful being. And I knew that Sedona was going to be a big part of my life because I was in the Tempe, Phoenix area, and it just started calling and calling. And then I started having these mystical dreams where I was flying over Sedona like Superman, and I would be soaring over the rocks, and I could zoom in to the tiny crystalline structure of the rocks.
Wow.
And it was guiding me from canyon to canyon, and I was just, everything in me just said, this is home. This is home. And you're going to be here. And I was about to graduate college, and I was looking for my next step. And that it was literally shown to me in a vision. And so I knew that Sedona and I were going to be linked. And so I started, on every trip I would bring home a Four Corners magazine. And it was this beautiful metaphysical publication, and I was studying journalism. And so I just decided I'm going to write for this magazine. And I started contacting the editor, and lo and behold, I got the job. That was my first entry into Sedona. Within the first year, I had interviewed Greg Braden, James Redfield, Master Zhao Tingju, and who became my Qigong teacher, one of them anyway. And so it was very fortuitous what happened in that first year. And I became very well known in just a year because of my position with the magazine. And so, that very quickly moved into doing spiritual land journeys. I happened to rent a home from a legend, God rest her soul, Suzanne McMillan, and she had opened arguably the first Vortex tour company ever. And she rented a property for many, many years, which is now High Vibe Collective. And so that beautiful red rock building has so much history for me because that was my first spiritual family. When I first arrived and started doing spiritual vortex tours and other sessions in 2003, March to be exact. So I literally just had my 20-year anniversary of being a spiritual guide in Sedona. And so she was an incredible teacher, and she would have this process of interviewing all of her applicants through a psychic advisor.
Wow.
Who is still local to the area, and I'm still in touch with him as well. And he would check you out on every level. He would literally go up to the 20th dimension and look down and be like, okay, let's see what kind of, karmic ties you might have with Suzanne, and if this is a really positive thing, or if there's some, maybe not so good stuff that you're needing to work out. Anyway, needless to say, I was a shoo-in, I guess. They welcomed me in, and turned out to be just a really beautiful connection. And I worked with that company until she passed in 2006. So she was the first one to formally teach me the land ceremonies. And she had worked with a Cherokee elder near Harbin Hot Springs for many, many years of her life. That was just, she was in a spiritual community, and that was her life, is just doing ceremonies and retreats. And so she taught me so much and really shared with me, her passion for the land. And when she passed away, all of us were very grief-stricken. And so anyone who could channel higher spirits were definitely channeling and attempting to channel her, the spirit of Suzanne. And she came through on this particular channeling, and she was like, Miguel, you're going to do so much more than I ever did. And I was like, at the time, it was hard to hear because I was like, you're a legend. Like, you've been here forever. You've done thousands and thousands of retreats and spiritual tours and healing sessions and channeling sessions and coaching and counseling sessions. I mean, to me, she was like the ultimate, workhorse. I mean, she just never stopped. She could be absolutely exhausted and lying in bed and still fielding phone calls from people that needed support.
Wow.
And so, that was my entry into Sedona. And I started exploring all of the ancient dwellings in Sedona. I have such a passion for the indigenous cultures. And so I really like to share a little bit about their history and their involvement here in the Red Rock land, because it's very sad that they weren't given any of this land that we call Sedona. And in this very valley, the reservation is like 3 or 4 square miles. I mean, it's tiny.
Yeah.
And that to me is a travesty, because those are 2 tribes, not just one, Yavapai and Apache, who have merged, and they have a tiny little piece of land. Now, could they come and live in any part of this area? Yes, they could. But it's also very expensive. And so it's not exactly very inviting to, someone who's not, making a tremendous amount of money. It's gotten very competitive for all of us, not just, indigenous people, but they have the right to live here and to really, establish their roots, because many of the youngsters, I feel, have forgotten those roots, because when they were conquered, a lot of them had to discontinue the habit of coming here on a type of retreat. Could be for 2 weeks, could be for a month, even a couple months. But this was a part-time place of living for the purpose of spiritual ceremony, largely. There might have been others living here just to live here, but the evidence shows that it was largely temporary homes and people who are here probably for a type of spiritual retreat. And when you're done, you go back home. Where is home? The areas we call Camp Verde, Rimrock, Cottonwood, Clarkdale, all the surrounding areas have more of the villages, 50 to be exact, 50 that we have recovered and found and are in decent condition. Some are not, some are indistinguishable to the naked eye, but others are in good shape. And so there were up to 10,000, maybe more, Native Americans in the entire Verde Valley. And so this was a bustling area, but they all regarded Sedona as unimaginably sacred. And when people say, where did the vortex come from? Well, obviously that's a modern term, and a lot of people credit Paige Bryant, a modern day psychic and healer and channel. But when I take people out on a tour, I always tell them the ancient history, because that's where we must begin. These legends that become aspects of our metaphysical knowledge, like vortices, begin somewhere. They always begin with an ancient knowledge and ancient teaching, and the legend and lore that comes from these extraordinary cultures, the Hopi, the Apache, the Yavapai, the Navajo, and others. And so this was and is their sacred land, and I like to honor that on every outing that I take, both personally and professionally, and just in my daily life. I'm always acknowledging the extraordinary contributions of the indigenous people and our local tribes here in Arizona. So
thank you so much for that reminder, Miguel. I feel it's very key to know that Sedona is a land that we come as a rite of passage. And some people think like, okay, we're just visiting, but to remember that the ancestors, the elders, use this land for ritual, for ceremony, and mostly for people to go through big transformations. Deep healing is so important. So in your opinion, when people visit and they don't know all this and you are just newly educating them, what are the main things that you think people can do to prevail those practices, or to honor them, or to even understand that the area that they are entering is so sacred? How you do that?
yeah, indeed. How do you do that? Because there's so many millions of people coming. And, I think with Keep Sedona Sacred, that's a really good start. I think we need some viral videos that get out there that are both humorous and educational.
Yeah.
Because when you can combine the two, then people can understand that we're not going to sit here and, judge you and be mean about this. We want to be accepting and loving because we love our tourists. We love those who are on a spiritual retreat. We love those who are here for any type of relaxation, any type of getaway. All that I would hope and ask is that you see the beauty here. It's undeniable. It's absolutely pristine. Take care of it. You see that the trails are uncluttered with trash. Let's keep it that way. The creeks, are really suffering. And my brother, Jason Danoff, is also very, very instrumental in trash pickup. And he's been interviewed on all sorts of news channels and done extraordinary work in his project of cleaning up Oak Creek, because people are throwing so much trash at places like Slide Rock and Red Rock Crossing, and they blast their music and, in big speakers and things like that. I mean, if you want to play a flute or a native drum, that's really what this land is all about. But to blast raucous music as loud as you can, just because you can, right, until somebody is so offended that they finally speak up and then risk an altercation, it shouldn't be that way. Everyone is here for their healing and upliftment. So we all have to pitch in. We can do this together, but it does require education and to know that there is a lot of evidence that the pollution and around the creek is a real thing. So it's not like just some do-gooders saying, be clean just because, we have polluted the creek. And when all that trash is thrown around the creek, it attracts animals. And then the animals come right up to the creek and defecate. And then that gets into the creek. And before you know it, they're saying, no swimming this week. The bacteria levels are too high. And so in the ancient times, you would have never had to worry about this. Oak Creek was most likely drinkable in ancient times. Now you would never want to drink it. And that's sad. And we can change that. And so there's, a lot of things like that just to be aware of, because, that's where I want to place my attention and energy, is education around trash pickup and, and really involving the rangers, because they, they do police a lot of different things, but I don't think they're necessarily the right things that they're policing. And so trash around those popular sites, I think, is one of the most important things we can do to respect this ancient land that is so revered by the Native Americans. And so that is very, very dear to my heart. But other than that, it's really about how you take your consciousness out into these canyons. And what is your intention? When you go out there with your friends, have a healing intention, have a prayer circle before you begin, just to honor the land, just to ask for permission, especially, if you're coming here on a bachelorette party, and, sure, you girls want to have fun, but also be aware that, noise carries so powerfully throughout these canyons. And just to be really mindful of the healing power of these lands. And that is lost on us if we cannot stop looking at our phone our entire hike, or we're blasting music from our backpack. That's the new thing, as people bring portable speakers in their backpack and boom it while they're on the trail. I mean, this is not Daytona Beach. This is a most incredible, powerful place. And so those kind of things, I think, can be easily remedied. And the locals, really do their best to set the example. And, other than that, it's about raising the vibration of this land through our own efforts and through our own ceremonies, because that in and of itself will lift people into a higher state. When they walk into that canyon and it's been totally electrified by powerful spiritual energy, intentions, prayers, and ceremonies, then that person's going to get a blessing and they're going to feel amazing and uplifted. It will actually bring them into a meditative state. So that's the part that locals play. If they're conscientious and willing, then they can add their beautiful ceremonies, their beautiful songs. Just as one example, I took my friends one time to the subway in Boynton. It's become a viral sensation. And my friends really wanted to see this place because it's getting really, really popular. And they thought, my God, we have to see it now before it's a zoo. Well, maybe it's already a zoo. That's the sad part. So we get there and we went super early, but it was already a zoo. And everyone was really frustrated. And, I said, I know it's frustrating, guys, but I'm going to get everyone in this canyon to be completely silent. And they're like, what are you going to do? Like, don't yell at them. I'm like, no, I'm not going to yell at them.
Doesn't sound like you
no,
anyways.
But I'll get every person in this canyon to be totally silent and respectful. And they're like, okay, how are you going to do that? And I whip out my flute and start playing. And all of a sudden, everyone goes from rah, 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 to... And then I get done and, and everyone's just clapping and encore. And I was like, wow, the power of music, and ceremony. Because whenever I play flute, it is a ceremony. It is an invitation to come into your inner stillness, to honor the sacred vibrations around you. If we're booming a stereo, we can't feel those sacred vibrations. If we have our headphones on and things like that, we're just in this kind of raucous vibration. But that moment we come into the stillness with the canyon and its consciousness, we are literally lifted into another place. And so those are the really special things that I want to talk about next, because when you are in the right state of mind and you do have a heart full of compassion and respect, the land can lift you into amazing places, and it can be really miraculous. And I've seen this a lot. I've taken many, many, many thousands of people out on the land, and I've done many thousands of ceremonies, both personally and professionally. And it's just absolute magic when that happens, because it's Mother Earth beckoning you in and raising you up into a higher state of consciousness.
Wow, Miguel, that sounds like a superpower. And when I hear you speak and the way you are so devoted to the land, it sounds to me that you really take in the responsibility to be a steward of the land, and knowing that Mother Sedona really chose you. It was like, okay, you are in this path, so I choose you to carry me, to cherish me, to allow others to know the potency and the power of this land through you, through your embodiment, through your words, and also through your music, because making music is also a way to weave in prayers into existence.
Yes, absolutely. And, I've gone out of my way to learn ceremonial songs and different ways of expressing beauty, devotion, gratitude, and really honoring all that the sacred land is. And really, I would encourage anyone from any faith, to use your faith, use your songs that you love from your temple, your church, your mosque, or whatever it is, and pray out there. Many people have lost this connection where they don't even acknowledge the living nature of Mother Earth, and therefore don't ask for permission for anything other than from other humans who might come down on them with a legal precedent, rather than the spiritual meaning of what it means to commune with the land and to ask for permission to build something. And so for the Native Americans in this area, they were not nearly as prolific as, say, the Mayans, who were building massive temples, pyramids, things like that, which had completely dumbfounded the Spaniards when they arrived. And the Spaniards were like, we don't get it. They're so advanced in architecture and science, but yet they're also involved in things like, human sacrifice, which don't seem to be very, very evolved. But they did have extraordinary tools, art and architecture, just to name a few. The indigenous of this area would have appeared to be living in a more simple way. Their structures were more simple, their diet was more simple. It was more or less a simple life, an easy life. obviously there are great challenges, so
Especially living in the desert.
yes, with
Right.
water and survival and all of those things. But there were a lot of moments where, it would have felt like a paradise. And as long as you can avoid warfare and things like that. So I have just infinite respect, love, and fascination for our indigenous ancestors, all those cultures and tribes who have come before the current American culture, who have really informed us and given us such a rich tradition and history that perhaps some have romanticized and cannot necessarily lay claim to. All that I can lay claim to is that my Spanish ancestors arrived in 1598. So we were literally part of the founding community of Santa Fe. And, and then my dad went back and did all of our genealogy, and he's like, we definitely have a few drops of native blood, but I don't know exactly what that is. And so it's not something I've ever claimed or made any sort of identification with. As far as I know, I'm Spanish, Portuguese, and German. And
Citizen of the world.
yeah. But these lands have spoken to me for so long. And when you hear all your life that our ancestors have been here in the Southwest, primarily New Mexico, and also Arizona as of recently, the 1950s, the Southwest always was calling to me. And I never understood why I was being raised on the East Coast, because every time I came here from a little boy, I never wanted to leave. And I would just say, leave me here in Arizona, Dad. I don't want to go back. It's not my home. And he's like, you're crazy. What are you saying? You have your family here, your brothers. I'm like, no. My brothers hate me. I'll be just fine here in Arizona. Everyone loves me here. I had family and cousins and aunts and uncles, and it was just such a beautiful way of life. But it was when I first saw Sedona that I was just like, and I'm sure you guys have all had a similar experience. That first moment you drive into Sedona, whether it's down the Oak Creek Canyon or up from the 179 and seeing Bell Rock and Courthouse Butte, or whatever it was that is your first Sedona memory.
This episode is brought to you by Scenic Sedona Tours, the perfect Sedona tour. See Sedona in the comfortable open-air vans with overhead canopies for shade in a fully narrated tour. Experience multiple vortex sites, learn about Sedona's geology and history, and even about the legends that have made Sedona famous. Ranked number 1 on TripAdvisor, you can also tour the Grand Canyon. All tours depart from the Dragon's Den, Sedona's hip, crystal, metaphysical gift and clothing store. You'll find local gems, authentic clothing, handmade goodies, and awe-inspiring crystals at all price points. Now, I love this store, and the energy in here is just amazing. So, feel free to pick out an unforgettable gift for a loved one, or just treat yourself. Clothes, crystals, oracle cards, good vibes, and more. So if you're looking for the go-to tour of Sedona and you want to kick back and relax and see Sedona the easy way, I highly suggest Scenic Sedona Tours and, of course, stopping into the Dragon's Den to freshen up your vibe.
But for me, it was an indelible impression that made me realize that I had a destiny here in this land, and that I owed it to not only myself, but all of the beings that live here, to really understand how to properly honor the land and protect these sacred sites, and to teach others how to protect these sites and to enter with respect. Is every person going out there going to do this? No, but as long as we can begin the conversation and really help people understand what Sedona really is and the potential it has for their growth, healing, and evolution, it will change their lives. I think that everyone should, come in and do like a Sedona exchange program where you like live here for a month or two and and swap houses with someone else. I don't know, how that would work, but to fully immerse yourself in the Sedona culture for a month or two, to really experience everything that we embody here, from dance, to ceremony, to, all the beautiful service projects that are going on here, the hiking to sacred places, doing your spiritual practices out there, finding places. For me, I have a very, very special place in a very special canyon where I go And that is like my absolute best day ever. You know, people are spending thousands to go on vacation to these exotic places. All I need is that special place high up in the mountains in a very specific canyon, which is my special place. And I will go there and spend an entire day. I'll be involved in, 8 to 10 hours of spiritual practice. And it is like I stayed at a monastery for a month. It is the highest medicine for me. And when I speak on that platform, it's like I have a private audience with God.
Wow.
And so that's the highest, or at least an example of what we can experience here when the mountains begin to commune with you, when you begin to recognize their essence as a profound being of love, and they welcome you in and they raise your consciousness, your frequency, so that you can liberate yourself from anything that is holding you down from this level of society. It's a very challenging time to live right now. I think we can all agree with all that we've been through in the last 3 or 4 years, and even beyond that, obviously, but it's been a really challenging time. And it's never been a better time to have a place like this where you can go on a little mini retreat anytime you want. And the concept of spending sacred time in nature alone as a form of retreat, I cannot put any more importance or emphasis on, because it's something that I feel is missing. Even sometimes when people do something like that, they'll be videoing the whole thing and doing self-interviews, and it's like, you're in this most holy place. Put away the technology for a while. Get to know who you are, independent of needing to show that to somebody else. Go spend hours out in nature alone and really find out who you are. And one doesn't always need medicine, for that. You can do such great things with breath work, with prayer, with yoga, with so many incredible ceremonial songs and dances and expression. But when I go out there, I mean, it's my time to be completely free. If I want to, take off all my clothes and lay in the sun, I can do that. There's nobody around. It's my personal private sanctuary. And so I highly recommend that everyone have a place they feel that free, and to really be the modern mystic, because maybe we don't have a cave we can go live in for months or years at a time, but maybe you have a cave that you can go to where you can drop in very, very, very deeply for a day or several days, and your life will change.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Yeah, that's a very powerful practice to learn how to be in right relationship with the land. Just as we cultivate our human relationships and we spend time with them and we nurture them, to know that we can do exactly the same to the land, going to the same place, bringing your prayer, bringing your intention, just being there with respect, with humbleness, that you have the privilege to even be there in such sacred ways, is very powerful to me, to realize that over time we do end up building these relationships with the invisible realm, with the land, and to be just in communion with our bodies. You mentioned something that really got me, that sense of belonging when you arrived here to Sedona, and how that really catapulted your own spiritual path with your own awakening. So I'm so curious to know what supported you during that time of deep awakening, in the knowing that probably no one in your family was going through a spiritual awakening, or you don't have the elders in that moment to support you to go through that. I just can't imagine, Miguel is in his timeline, and then boom, this explosion of all this is possible to my soul, all this is available, I have this soul blueprint, but now how I unfold and stay sane and navigate both realms, the mundane and the spiritual calling that you, of course, were following.
Yeah, great question. I have always been very fortunate to have spiritual community and mentors. And so there's always people in my life that I look up to that are more advanced than I am. And I'm very good at admitting that. There's no ego there. When I first became aware of the work of Patricia Cota-Robles, for example, who's an extraordinary teacher, I absolutely adore her work. I started listening to her material and reading her books. And to me, that was, someone that I could look to that was holding her vibration so high, so many years, decades, decade after decade. That always served as an inspiration for me, to have such unwavering teachers, because I had a very rough upbringing, and I was always up and down and all over the place, very emotional, very impulsive, huge extremes of ups and downs. So it wasn't as though like, I had my awakening and I learned some skills and now I'm certified in Reiki and yoga and Qigong and I do land journeys and, I'm guiding people every day and life is perfect. Well, no, I'm doing thousands of sessions over the years, and it brings up a lot because you're working with powerful tools and powerful situations with people. So when you embody that energy of guide, teacher, mentor, I can do that very, very well. It's like second nature. But that doesn't mean I don't still have issues and problems and pain in my private time. It actually exacerbates those problems. And it makes it appear to oneself as a major contrast, because you're like, geez, I'm here like guiding and helping, and they're like so into it and giving me all this praise. But privately, I realize I got some issues I got to deal with, and it's really tender, and it's really, so then being in a spiritual community and being very well known, as Aaron would say, the poster child of a spiritual land guide or whatever he said. But, I have become very well known as a spiritual practitioner, a spiritual tour guide, and as such, doing a lot of professional work. And what I have found is that there is a very high expectation where people will say, oh, well, you got angry. You're not supposed to get angry. You're, or you said something that was mean. You're not supposed to say things that are mean, It's like, what? Am I supposed to be perfect? Like, I'm still, a triple Scorpio and very intense being, highly emotional. So these practices and mentors have been so helpful for me to ground in my energy, to keep coming back into alignment, to keep humbling myself over and over and over again, because it's never ending, and there'll always be another level to get more humble and more humble. And when I say humble, I mean self-aware, truly self-aware of anything that needs my attention, needs my love, needs my forgiveness. And I evolve little by little, day by day, and my community is there for me. And the greatest manifestation, since I've been listening to Patricia, one of my mentors for so many years, she called me out of the blue, and I had seen her at conferences and always been a student, but we had never had a personal relationship. It was just, through her teachings, through her recordings and her books and everything. And she calls me about a month ago, and I'm just like blown away, because I'm like, I literally listen to you every single night as I'm falling to sleep. You're literally guiding me into the higher realms every night while I sleep. And now you're here on the phone saying, Miguel, we love your music, and we'd like to invite you to the 37th Annual Congress on Illumination. Oh, wow. In Tucson, Arizona. And, this is a legend, who I absolutely adore. And it was just a wonderful confirmation that I'm on the right path. I'm, definitely putting my energy out there and wanting to be more of service. And the highest form of service came right into my path and found me. And to me, that's when you're doing great. So I hope I answered your question fully.
Yeah, you do. And speaking about that, I hear a lot that Sedona brings synchronicities into people's life and a lot of shadow work.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know more about that.
Yeah, so when I do tours with people, I always say, and I have to credit Suzanne because she was my first Sedona mentor, and she would always say, the vortex doesn't have an opinion about what you're feeling. It's just going to magnify whatever you consistently focus upon.
Wow.
And so now we have, Dr. Bruce Lipton and all, Dr. Joe Dispenza and all these amazing people telling us, what the masters have always said for hundreds and hundreds of years. What you focus on, you become. What you focus on, you manifest and bring into form. And so for me, that's a very, very important part of this equation. To live in Sedona is like the advanced, PhD program of spirituality.
It feels like that some days.
And you can evolve anywhere in
Right.
Manhattan, in
Right.
Dallas, Texas, wherever. You can evolve anywhere, and you'll have a certain degree of arc in your evolution, right? In Sedona, it's just, if you're ready, you can blast off.
Yeah, it feels like the accelerated path for sure.
Yeah. And not everyone's ready for that. They just come here and go, oh, I was here on vacation and it's so beautiful and I love the community. I'm going to live here. And it's like, okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah. I mean, you're welcome to. We love you. You're amazing. But just be aware. It's going to push your buttons. It's going to test you. So Suzanne would always say to newlyweds, she would say, do your honeymoon here, but don't live here. Not right away. Take a good year, maybe 2,
Right.
to really get to know each other as a married couple. Because once you're married, there is definitely a different energy there. It's so much different than just dating. There's a whole bag of conditioning and expectations that comes along with that. And so Sedona, you don't want to complicate that by moving to Sedona and thinking, oh, everything's going to be great because it's high energy and it's so creative. Well, yeah, if you can be in a place that is completely joyful and loving every second of every day, yeah, you'll do great in Sedona. But who can do that? There's going to be fluctuations.
Yeah, I mean, we're humans. We get triggers. We navigate the full spectrum of emotions. So
Totally.
yeah.
And so as a highly sensitive being, as I am, and I'm sure you are too, I've had to learn how to navigate that. And at one point in my Sedona life, I had really severe anxiety. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, what is going on? And when I go to Phoenix, I'm fine. Flagstaff, I'm fine. Sedona, always this anxiety. What is going on? Why is it specific just to Sedona? I find out a few years later through just natural experimentation with some health products that are locally made here, that my body needed not only to detox heavy metals, but also to bring in the healthy metals like tiny amounts of gold, tiny amounts of silver, what are known as the platinum group. And those help to, revivify your energy field and help you conduct more electrical energy. And for whatever reason, taking those products and the zeolite in particular with the superconductive elements, that changed everything. I mean, like overnight. I still take those products to this day. That I discovered that in 2006. Okay. And so I, for whatever reason, was having a really hard time in Sedona because the energies of Sedona were pulling on the heavy metals like mercury and aluminum. And they were making a toxic environment worse inside my body. Once I started getting all of those heavy metals out, and the really good, conductive, healthy metals in addition to other forms of cleansing, qigong, breathwork, meditation, it was literally like night and day different. And from that moment on, I've been able to feel just fine in Sedona. Not to say that there's not intensity, there's still intensity. And so I have to be really on point. And so if I want to feel amazing in Sedona, guess what? I have to get a good night's sleep. I have to wake up with intention, with rituals, with positivity. I exercise almost every single day of my life. I'm either hiking or working out at the gym or swimming or, yoga, every day I exercise, and I feel like that's a key to managing these energies. Another is specific forms of meditation where you can sit with the feelings. And what I mean by feelings is the sensations and energies and physical sensations, rather than reliving a feeling or reliving a memory, to really sit with all of the sensations. So very much like Vipassana, just kind of a modified form that I've kind of done over the years for myself. Because if all that stuff that's rising to the surface because of the Sedona energy, and you're just going, I don't want to feel it. I don't want to deal with it. Well, guess what? You gotta, because
you can ignore that. The more you ignore something, the more it persists.
Right. And so why not just sit with it and love it, So I liken it to holding a baby, and the baby could be screaming. And you're not going to try and like shush the baby. You're going to allow it to be a baby. So if your inner self is crying, allow it to cry. Sit with it as patiently as you would hold a baby. Allow your inner self to scream and cry and do whatever it needs. And you are the loving parent in this metaphor, holding the baby with peace and love. Okay, you're not crying with the baby. You're not allowing yourself to be affected by its emotional state. You're maintaining your Zen, which is the observer metaphor in meditation, while the inner part might be crying and going through torment. And so to me, that's how I have found the tools to really evolve more quickly. And also through all my relationships, even friendships, have been an extraordinary teacher, and one of the most challenging, but one of the most fruitful. So like, for example, I just came out with this song, The Sacred Mirror, and it really is about the mirrors that we play for each other. And that doesn't have to be romantic. It could be brother, sister, could be father, mother, could be any combination. But, in Sedona, those mirrors are just even stronger.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah. So whether it's a synchronistic opportunity that comes into your life, or a synchronistic partner that happens to show up, and or just certain people in the community that you're connecting to here in Sedona, because everything is amplified. You're going to see whatever is inside of you come to life in all these different people, and they will be mirroring and reflecting everything, both that needs healing and the areas that you've more or less mastered. And then you will find so much love, so much creativity, so much collaboration. People will just jump at the chance to collaborate with you because you've healed most of your stuff, and they're like, I want to work with that person. They're amazing. And that's when a small conscious community like Sedona can be so magical and powerful, because we are all advanced beings doing our work in the world that we love, and we're coming together to help each other to move forward with a collective mission. And so that's what I love to see in this community, is every time we come together for a dance, a group ceremony, a healing circle, a kirtan circle, anything, we all have that collective intention to raise the energy, not just of Sedona and the consciousness of this land, but the entire planet, and to really help us to shift organically into that next level that the Hopi referred to as the fifth world. And so we are at the cusp of the fifth world, and every great indigenous culture, so many different religious traditions have spoken of this, but it's for real, everyone. I just want to say that because, this has been a huge area of study in my life for over 20 years. And, the Hopi have said, we are no longer at the 11th hour. We are at the hour. We are at the moment. This is the time for transformation. We all have a responsibility to Mother Earth. We can no longer play dumb. We have to understand we are powerful beings, and that we have the ability to create whatever we wish on this planet. And so the indigenous understanding is that we are the caretakers of this planet. If you are not caring for this planet, then guess what? You're just a taker, and we have enough takers. And, now we need the caretakers to understand, similar to how our indigenous communities did in ancient times, that they had a responsibility to the land, not just to keep it clean, but to honor it with ceremony and gratitude. Through the law of reciprocity, every aspect of the universe requires some form of reciprocity. If you are blessed with every beautiful thing imaginable, wealth and health and beauty and love, then give gratitude every day. Pour out that gratitude. Tell Creator, tell Mother Earth, tell the angels and the masters, thank you, thank you, thank you for my beautiful life. Thank you to this beautiful Sedona land. Thank you, Mother Sedona. So however you like to express that in your prayers, in your ceremonies, perfect, because the spirit guardians will reveal themselves to you as well. And they'll take you into beautiful experiences if your heart is pure. And so that's always been kind of the initiation of any culture, any great culture known for having access to higher states of consciousness, have gone through initiations in order to earn that right to embody this consciousness and to travel interdimensionally and have these portals open up. So my special spot in that secret canyon of mine is an absolute portal. And, that's where I go to really transcend this reality. And we all need that, because everyone, whether you like it or not, are stuck to your phones most of the day. And even myself, this is one of my biggest challenges. And so when I can go out and get away from it all, you get to disconnect from this earthly identity that you have created for yourself. And you get to look beyond. Who am I really? Who is this being that I truly am at the highest level of creation? And that's when things get really, really special. So Sedona is a sacred portal. It is an opening into a new way of life, a new you, but you have to come with the respect, the curiosity, the playfulness, the love, the gratitude, and some form of ceremony or ritual, whatever that looks like for you, whatever feels fun and sincere and beautiful. Those rocks would love if you sing to them.
Or dance.
Yeah, dance, play, laugh, that's what we can contribute. And so I feel really complete with what I've shared so far. Do you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
No, Miguel, you are a gift to the world, to the community. I'm sure Mama Sedona is so proud of you and all the beautiful, potent work that you are doing. Thank you for sharing so many tools for everyone in the ascension path. Thank you for your presence and for really walking the path of sacred stewardship. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. And please tell us, where else can we find you, your work, your music?
Yeah, so I'm just finishing up an album, and it's on every major platform, from Spotify to iTunes to YouTube. And these are all, sacred, beautiful, inspirational songs that I really want to uplift people, and many you can sing along to. Some have mantras in them, Sanskrit mantras, Mayan, excerpts, things like that. And so all that I do is designed to help people heal, and to really give them something they can relate to, and to really describe in musical terms the spiritual journey, the adventures of it, the sorrow, the triumphs, the incredible tenacity that it takes to keep going. You might have a week or two where you feel really, really happy, and then you crash. And with music and dance and singing and, hiking and ceremony, all these things can help you to recapture that zeal, that zest, that aliveness that you might have remembered from an earlier time in life. You can be that again, and actually even better, because we're not returning to the past. We're creating ourselves all anew. And to do that, we just have to reimagine, re-explore what it is that makes you really, really excited, really happy. How does your body want to move? How do you want to sing that song? What sort of exercise do you want to implement in your life? What is your spiritual practice on any given day? It could be anything. There's infinite creativity. So have fun with the path. Be playful, but be sincere, because the whole universe is watching. And not in a judgmental way, but they're really watching to see, are you walking the path that you say you are? There's so many people that will come out and say, I'm a teacher, right? And I had the same challenge. I started being some form of a public teacher around the age of 22. And my mentor had pushed me out the door, and not literally, but he said, go teach a class. And I was terrified. And I finally decided on a meditation group based around the Ascended Master's teachings, because I really wanted to be of service in some way. But I was terrified. And so I just dropped into a meditative state, and I started bringing through this incredible higher self guidance. And I went, that's how I'm going to do it. Not by memorizing some script or being able to recite some book that I read, but just channeling my higher self, bringing through powerful prayers, invocations, and blessings, and offering that as my guidance. It worked out so beautifully in that early time in my life that I knew I was destined for some form of service in the spiritual field. I didn't know it would become my whole career, but it's been an incredible journey. And so I just stay committed to exactly what I just described, because if I get mechanical in my practices, then they're no longer going to have the passion. I have to be evolving them, and reinventing and just improving upon them. And if any part of me goes off into mechanical, then I have to bring it back into total higher self-alignment. And that's the embodiment that I strive to experience every day of my life. And I really hope that it comes through the music and everything that I offer. So right now, I don't have a website. I've always, enjoyed just having a very, very simple life. I probably will at some point, but I'm on Instagram at Miguel Montoya Mystic. And then you can find me on Spotify, Miguel Montoya, or look up song by song, The Sacred Mirror or Love Is What I Am, Released Into the Sun, just to give you a few things to look for. And thank you for tuning in. I'm so honored to be able to share this knowledge with you. And we invite you to come experience Sedona in the sacred way. God bless and have a beautiful day, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you, Sabina.